"I've gone too long without a man," the Apache girl said to Lonely Rancher. The wind moved gently across the dusty plains, carrying with it the faint smell of dry grass and earth. Thomas McAllister, a man in his late 40s, wiped sweat from his brow as he examined the fence he had been repairing all afternoon. He had lived on this ranch for nearly 30 years, ever since he had inherited it from his father. Life had always been hard here, but Thomas had learned to embrace the solitude. He liked the quiet. He liked the routine. Out here, the only sounds were the wind in the trees, the lowing of cattle, and the occasional coyote's cry at night. Thomas had never married again after the death of his wife many years ago. He had loved her deeply, and her absence had left a hollow in his life that no one else had filled. He had thought he would never need anyone again, that the land and the animals were enough to keep him company. Yet as he worked under the fading sun, he felt a small emptiness that he could not ignore. Just as he was about to finish fixing the last post, he noticed movement at the edge of his property. A figure appeared on the horizon, walking along the dirt road that led to his ranch. At first, Thomas thought it might be a traveler or a lost hiker. But as the figure came closer, he saw that it was a young woman. She moved with confidence and grace, despite the rough terrain, her dark hair glinting under the last rays of sunlight. There was something in the way she carried herself that made Thomas pause. He set down his tools and watched her approach, curious but cautious. The woman stopped a few feet away, looking around as if sizing up her surroundings. Her clothes were simple but clean, and she carried a small bag over her shoulder. Thomas noticed her eyes dark, deep, and full of emotion. They held a mixture of strength and sadness, a combination that made him feel unexpectedly nervous. "Hello," she said softly. Her voice was calm, yet there was an honesty in it that caught Thomas off guard. "My name is Ayanna." Thomas straightened, trying to appear composed. "I'm Thomas. You're on my land," he said, his tone friendly but wary. He didn't usually have visitors, and strangers were rare in this part of the country. Ayanna smiled faintly. "I know. I hope you don't mind me coming here." She hesitated for a moment, then added, "I've gone too long without a man." The words hung in the air, unexpected and bold. Thomas blinked, unsure how to respond. He had never been approached in such a straightforward way, especially not by a stranger. He felt a strange mix of surprise and curiosity. There was no hint of playfulness or mischief in her tone, only honesty. That honesty made him uneasy yet intrigued. "Too long without a man," he repeated cautiously. "Yes," she said, looking at him with steady eyes. "I've been alone for a long time. I needed someone to talk to, someone to trust." Thomas's heart quickened slightly. He had spent years building walls around himself, believing he didn't need anyone. Yet here was a woman, a stranger, standing before him, breaking through those walls with a few simple words. He didn't know if he should invite her in or tell her to leave. But something about her presence felt calming, like a fresh breeze after a long, hot day. "Would you like some water?" Thomas asked finally, gesturing toward his small porch. "You must be tired from walking." Ayanna nodded gratefully. "Yes, thank you." They walked together to the porch, the wooden boards creaking under their feet. Thomas fetched 2 glasses of water from the kitchen, handing one to Ayanna. She drank slowly, savoring the cool liquid as if it were the most refreshing thing she had tasted in years. "Thank you," she said softly. "It's been a long day." Thomas nodded. "It has been. Are you from around here?" Ayanna shook her head. "No, I left my home recently. I needed a change. I wanted to see the world beyond the reservation." Her voice carried a quiet strength, but there was also a hint of vulnerability. She looked out over the open land, her eyes following the distant horizon. "I've always been curious about life outside, about what's possible." Thomas listened carefully, sensing that she had been through a lot. There was a depth to her story, even if she hadn't said much yet. He didn't press her for details. Sometimes, people shared their pasts in their own time. Right now, he wanted to offer her a sense of safety, a temporary place to rest. They sat together in silence for a few moments, watching the sun dip below the mesas. The colors of the sky shifted from orange to deep pink, then to purple, as the first stars began to appear. The ranch was peaceful, and the quiet seemed to wrap around them like a soft blanket. For the first time in many years, Thomas felt a sense of connection, a warmth he had forgotten he could feel. "I don't usually have visitors," he said finally, breaking the silence. "Most people don't come out this far." Yana smiled faintly. "I can see why, but there's something beautiful about being far from everyone else. It feels freeing." Thomas nodded. He understood that feeling well. Life on the ranch was hard, but it was honest. There were no pretenses, no pressures from the outside world, just the land, the animals, and the work that needed to be done each day. And now, unexpectedly, there was someone to share it with, even if only for a short while. They continued to talk as the evening settled around them. Jana spoke of her childhood, the traditions she had grown up with, and the dreams she had carried with her all these years. She spoke with passion, and Thomas found himself drawn in, listening intently. He shared some of his own stories too, about his wife, the struggles of maintaining the ranch, and the loneliness that had become a part of his life. As the night grew darker, Thomas built a small fire in the outdoor pit. The flames flickered and danced, casting warm light on their faces. They talked for hours, sharing memories, hopes, and fears. There was a quiet understanding forming between them, a bond built not on appearances or convenience, but on honesty and shared human experience. At one point, Ayana looked at Thomas and said softly, "I don't know why I feel so comfortable with you already. I've only just met you, but it feels like I can trust you." Thomas smiled gently. "Sometimes people just understand each other, even without knowing everything. Maybe we've both been waiting for someone who sees us as we are." Yana nodded, her eyes reflecting the firelight. For a moment, the world outside the ranch seemed to disappear. There was no past, no future, only this moment, shared between two people who had both felt the weight of loneliness and the desire for connection. By the time the fire had burned low, Ayana stood to leave, gathering her small bag. "Thank you for letting me stay for a while," she said. "I didn't expect to find this." Thomas watched her, feeling an unfamiliar sense of anticipation. "You're welcome," he replied. "You're welcome anytime," she smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Maybe I will come back," she said. And with that, she walked into the darkness, leaving Thomas to wonder if he had just met someone who could change his life forever. As he went inside to lock up for the night, Thomas felt a strange mixture of excitement and uncertainty. He didn't know what the future held or if Ayana would return, but for the first time in a long time, he felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps life had more to offer than solitude and routine. Perhaps, against all odds, a connection could be formed in the most unexpected places. He lay in bed that night listening to the wind outside, thinking of her words, "I've gone too long without a man." The simplicity and honesty of them stayed with him, echoing in his mind. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to imagine a different kind of life, one where companionship, trust, and even love could exist once more, quietly growing in the spaces between ordinary days. And as sleep finally took him, Thomas realized that sometimes life's most profound changes began with a single moment of courage, a single step taken toward another human being. In that moment on the quiet Arizona ranch, two lives had intersected, and neither would ever be the same again. The next morning, the ranch was bathed in soft golden sunlight. The air carried the scent of dry grass, fresh earth, and the faint aroma of coffee brewing inside the small kitchen. Thomas moved quietly around the house, performing his usual morning routine, feeding the chickens, checking on the cattle, and making sure the water troughs were full. Yet today, his mind kept drifting back to Ayana. He could still see her face in the firelight from the night before, her eyes bright and honest, her words simple but full of meaning. By mid-morning, the sound of footsteps approaching the house made Thomas look up. Gianna was walking toward him again, carrying her small bag. She had a determined yet light-hearted expression, as if she had made up her mind about something important. "Good morning," she said with a gentle smile. "I hope I'm not intruding." Thomas shook his head. "Not at all. I was hoping you'd come by. You're welcome here any time." Gianna set her bag down and glanced around the ranch, taking in the fences, the fields, and the small barn where a few horses were grazing. She had a quiet curiosity about her, a way of observing the world that seemed both thoughtful and respectful. "This place, it's peaceful," she said. "I can see why you stay here. It's different from anywhere else." Thomas nodded, feeling a small pride swell in his chest. He had spent decades building this life, maintaining the land and tending to the animals. It was hard work and often lonely work, but it had shaped him. And now, seeing someone appreciate it, even in a small way, felt strangely comforting. Over the next few days, Ayana began to help Thomas with the ranch chores. She worked alongside him from sunrise to sunset, learning quickly how to manage the animals, repair fences, and handle tools she had never used before. Thomas was impressed by her strength, her focus, and the ease with which she adapted to a life so different from the one she had known. She asked questions politely, listened carefully, and offered suggestions that often reflected her practical intelligence. Thomas found himself enjoying her company more than he had expected. They laughed together when a stubborn cow refused to move, and they shared quiet moments of reflection when the work was done. There was a natural rhythm to their days, a flow that combined work, conversation, and the occasional comfortable silence. One evening, after a long day of tending to the fields, they sat on the porch, sipping water and watching the sky turn from orange to deep purple. The air was cooler now, carrying the scent of sagebrush and the distant mountains. Yana turned to Thomas and said softly, "I've never had this much freedom before. On the reservation, life felt limited. There were expectations, rules, and boundaries that made it hard to breathe. Here, I feel like I can finally be myself." Thomas listened, feeling a deep respect for her honesty. "It's not easy living out here," he said. "The work is hard, and there are days when you wonder if it's worth it. But I've always believed that if you keep going, the land and the life will reward you in ways you can't always see." Jana smiled faintly, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "I think I understand that now. There's a rhythm to this life, a kind of honesty I've never known before." Their conversations grew deeper over the following weeks. Jana shared stories of her childhood, the games she played with her siblings, the traditions her family observed, and the lessons she had learned from elders in her community. She spoke with pride and nostalgia, but also with a sense of longing for the freedom she had always craved. Thomas shared parts of his own past as well, telling her about his late wife, the joys and challenges of maintaining the ranch, and the quiet loneliness that had accompanied him for so many years. Despite their differences in age, background, and experiences, they found common ground. Both had faced loss and isolation, both had learned to be resilient, and both understood the value of honesty and trust. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a bond that grew stronger with each passing day. One afternoon, while repairing a broken fence near the edge of the property, Ayana paused to wipe the sweat from her brow. "Thomas," she said, her voice hesitant, "I feel like I'm learning more than just ranch work. I'm learning about myself. I didn't realize how much I needed to discover who I really am." Thomas looked at her, noticing the mixture of vulnerability and determination in her expression. "That's the beauty of life," he said quietly. "We're always learning, even when we think we know ourselves. Sometimes it takes new experiences and new people to help us see what we've been missing." Jana nodded, smiling softly. She continued helping him, her movements confident and steady, but there was a new warmth in the way she looked at him. Thomas, too, found himself noticing small things. The way her eyes lit up when she talked about something she cared about, the gentle laughter that escaped her lips during moments of shared humor, and the quiet strength that seemed to radiate from her very presence. One evening, after they had finished the day's work, Ayana asked if she could help with the evening chores. Together, they fed the animals, cleaned the barn, and prepared a simple meal. The routine felt natural, almost like a dance they had learned together over time. By the time the sun set, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, they sat on the porch with mugs of tea, savoring the calm of the desert evening. "I never thought I'd find someone I could talk to so easily," Yana said quietly. "Most people I've met either didn't understand me or didn't care to, but with you it's different. I feel like I can be myself without pretending." Thomas felt a warmth in his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. "It's the same for me," he admitted. "I've spent so long alone thinking I didn't need anyone, but now I realize that companionship, even in small ways, makes life richer." Their bond continued to grow, not through grand gestures or dramatic events, but through small, everyday moments. The way they shared meals, worked together, and talked under the stars created a sense of intimacy and trust. Thomas found himself looking forward to Ayana's presence, and Ayana felt a growing sense of security and belonging she had never known before. One particularly quiet evening, as they watched the moon rise over the distant hills, Ayana turned to Thomas with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever feel like life gives us signs, moments that guide us towards something we didn't even know we were looking for?" Thomas considered her words carefully. "I do," he said finally. "Sometimes it's a person, sometimes it's a place, and sometimes it's just a feeling. I think those signs are easy to miss if we're not paying attention." Yana smiled, a soft, contented smile that seemed to reflect the peace she had found on the ranch. "Then I guess meeting you was one of those signs for me." Thomas felt a surge of emotion he couldn't quite name. He had never expected to meet someone like Ayana, someone who could enter his life so naturally, yet leave such a profound impact. He reached out and gently rested his hand on hers, a silent acknowledgement of the connection that had grown between them. As the weeks turned into months, their days followed a comforting rhythm. They rose with the sun, tended to the land and animals, shared meals, and spent evenings talking, laughing, and sometimes sitting in companionable silence. Through it all, Ayana's presence brought a renewed sense of purpose and joy to Thomas's life, while Thomas's steady support and quiet strength gave Ayana the sense of safety and belonging she had longed for. Their relationship, though unspoken in terms of romantic labels, was undeniable. There was a growing intimacy, a trust and understanding that went beyond words. They had become partners in the truest sense, two people who had found solace in each other amidst the challenges of life on the ranch. One afternoon, as they repaired a section of fencing near the edge of the property, Ayana paused and looked at Thomas with a thoughtful expression. "I've never been part of something like this before," she said softly. "It feels real, honest, and I like that. I like being here with you, learning, working, and just living." Thomas smiled, feeling a deep sense of contentment. "I feel the same way," he admitted. "You've brought something into my life that I didn't know was missing, and now that it's here, I don't want to let it go." Yana's eyes met his, and for a long moment they simply looked at each other, understanding the unspoken emotions that had grown between them. The bond they had formed was not sudden or forced. It had developed gradually, built on trust, shared experiences, and the quiet acknowledgement of each other's presence. That evening, as the sun set and the desert cooled, they sat together on the porch, sipping tea and listening to the gentle sounds of the ranch. The sky turned dark, revealing countless stars twinkling above. It was a perfect, peaceful moment, one that neither would forget. In that quiet evening, with the vast Arizona desert stretching out before them, Thomas and Ayanna realized that life had brought them together for a reason. They had both experienced loneliness, uncertainty, and longing, yet now they had found a connection that was genuine, nurturing, and full of potential. And as they watched the stars together, they silently promised themselves to cherish this bond, to protect it, and to allow it to grow naturally, one day at a time. Life on the ranch had settled into a quiet rhythm, but with the closeness between Thomas and Ayanna growing, new feelings and challenges began to emerge. Their bond, once filled with curiosity and mutual support, now carried the weight of deeper emotions. The air between them seemed charged at times, unspoken thoughts lingering in glances and gentle touches, moments of laughter tinged with a quiet longing. One morning, as the sun rose over the distant hills, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Thomas noticed Ayanna sitting alone near the barn. She was gazing out over the open fields, her expression thoughtful. He approached quietly, not wanting to disturb her. "Good morning," he said softly. Ayanna turned toward him, offering a small, almost wistful smile. "Good morning. I was just thinking," she said. "There's so much about life I still don't understand. Even here on the ranch, I feel like I'm learning something new every day." Thomas nodded, understanding. Life has a way of teaching us lessons we don't always expect. Sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones that matter most. She looked down at her hands for a moment, then back at him. "Thomas, do you ever feel like people expect too much from us? That no matter what we do, it's never enough?" Thomas considered her words carefully. "All the time. Society, family, friends, everyone has opinions and expectations. But the important thing is to find what's right for yourself, to live honestly and with integrity. If you do that, then you're doing enough." Yana smiled faintly. "I wish it were that simple." Thomas chuckled softly. "Life rarely is, but that doesn't mean we can't try to make it meaningful." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of horses neighing in the distance. Thomas suggested they check on the animals, and together they walked to the pasture. As they tended to the horses and cattle, a quiet tension lingered between them. Both were aware of the growing feelings they had for each other, but neither had yet found the courage to speak them aloud. Later that afternoon, as they repaired a broken section of fence near the edge of the property, Ayanna paused, leaning on the wooden post. "Thomas," she began hesitantly, "there's something I need to tell you." Thomas stopped what he was doing, turning to face her. "What is it?" She took a deep breath. "I'm afraid that no matter how much I care for you, the world might not accept us. Afraid that my past, my family, or even the town could come between us." Thomas's heart ached at the vulnerability in her voice. He reached out and gently took her hand. "Ayanna," he said quietly, "I understand your fears. I've faced similar ones myself. But the world outside doesn't matter as much as the bond we share. What matters is that we trust each other and stay true to ourselves." Yana looked at him, tears glistening in her eyes. "I want that, Thomas. I want it more than anything. But what if it's not enough?" Thomas squeezed her hand reassuringly. "Then we face it together. Whatever comes our way, we face it side by side." The honesty in their words created a new level of intimacy between them. That evening, after the chores were done, Thomas suggested they sit by the fire pit outside. The flames flickered in the cool evening air, casting warm light on their faces. They shared a quiet meal of bread and stew, and for the first time they allowed themselves to speak freely about their emotions. "I've never felt like this before," Yana admitted, her voice soft. "I've been lonely for so long, and I never imagined I could feel so connected to someone." Thomas nodded, feeling a deep resonance in her words. "I know what you mean. I've spent years in solitude thinking it was enough. But now being with you, sharing this life, it feels like I've found something I didn't even know I was missing." They sat in silence for a few moments, watching the stars appear in the clear desert sky. The quiet was comfortable, filled with understanding rather than tension. Yana leaned slightly against Thomas, feeling the warmth of his presence. For the first time, she allowed herself to fully relax, to believe that connection and companionship were possible. The following days brought both joy and subtle challenges. The townsfolk began to notice the unusual partnership forming between Thomas and Ayana. While some were supportive, others whispered behind closed doors, questioning the relationship between a middle-aged rancher and a young Apache woman. Yana, aware of the gossip, sometimes grew quiet and introspective, unsure how much it mattered to her or Thomas. One afternoon, Thomas's neighbor, Mr. Henderson, came by to discuss some cattle matters. During the conversation, he casually remarked, "It's nice seeing the ranch bustling again, Thomas. And well, it's good to see you've got company, but you know people do talk." Thomas looked at him carefully. "People always talk. What matters is what we know about ourselves and each other." Gianna, who had been standing nearby, felt a wave of relief at Thomas's words. She realized that the opinions of others would never matter as much as the trust and understanding she shared with him. Despite the external pressures, their days continued with the same rhythm of work and companionship. They repaired fences, fed the animals, and shared meals together. Slowly, the bond between them deepened into something more profound, a connection built not only on shared labor but on shared dreams, fears, and hopes for the future. One evening, after a particularly long day of work, Ayana turned to Thomas with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever think about the future?" she asked. Thomas considered her question. "I do, sometimes, but it's hard to predict what will happen. The best we can do is focus on what we have now and make the most of it." Ayana nodded. "I suppose you're right. It's just, I can't help but imagine what life could be like if we face it together, truly together." Thomas felt a surge of emotion. He had wanted to express his feelings for her for some time, but the right words had always seemed elusive. Now, seeing the sincerity in her eyes, he realized that the moment had arrived. "Yana," he said softly, "I care for you more than I can express. These past weeks have shown me that life is richer and fuller when shared with someone you trust and respect. I want to face the future with you, no matter what comes our way." Yana's eyes filled with tears and she reached out to take his hand. "I feel the same way, Thomas. I've never felt this safe or understood. I want to be with you, and I want us to face everything together." The shared confession brought a sense of relief and joy that neither had anticipated. For the first time, the barriers of fear, doubt, and uncertainty began to crumble. They sat together by the fire, holding hands, and allowed themselves to imagine a life where they could rely on each other fully. Yet, even as their connection grew stronger, challenges continued to arise. Yana's family called one evening, concerned about her living so far from the reservation. They expressed worries about judgment and misunderstandings, urging her to return home. Yana felt torn between the life she was building with Thomas and the expectations of her family. Thomas, sensing her conflict, offered gentle support. "You need to do what feels right for you," he said, "but know that I will stand by you whatever choice you make. Your happiness matters more than anything." Yana smiled, grateful for his understanding. "Thank you, Thomas. That means more than you know." The nights on the ranch became a time of reflection and shared dreams. They talked about what they wanted from life, what they hoped to achieve, and the kind of home they wished to build together. Every conversation strengthened their trust, deepened their bond, and allowed them to envision a future filled with companionship and understanding. One evening, as a gentle breeze swept across the porch, Ayana whispered, "I never imagined I could feel this way again. I thought loneliness would always be a part of me, but with you, it feels like I've finally found a place to belong." Thomas held her hand, his heart full. "You belong here with me, with this land, and with the life we're creating together. We'll face challenges, yes, but we'll face them together." The desert sky darkened, revealing countless stars that twinkled like distant diamonds. The quiet of the ranch surrounded them, a comforting reminder of the peace they had found in each other's presence. It was a moment of clarity, of connection, and of promise, a silent understanding that, despite the challenges ahead, they would navigate life together. In the following weeks, they continued to face obstacles with patience and understanding. Gossip from the town slowly faded as people witnessed the sincerity of their partnership. Iana's family, once concerned, came to recognize Thomas's genuine care and respect for her. Together, they learned to balance the expectations of others with their own desires, building a life that honored both tradition and personal choice. Through it all, Thomas and Ayana's relationship grew stronger. They shared quiet mornings watching the sunrise, long afternoons working side by side, and peaceful evenings under the stars. Each day reinforced the bond that had formed between them, a bond built on trust, respect, honesty, and the willingness to face life's challenges together. And in those moments, when the wind whispered across the plains and the world seemed still, they realized that love, true and enduring, often arrived quietly, in the spaces between ordinary days, in shared labor, shared laughter, and shared trust. Spring arrived on the Arizona plains with gentle warmth, and the ranch began to awaken from the quiet stillness of winter. The grass turned a fresh shade of green, wildflowers appeared in bursts of color, and the air carried the sweet scent of blooming sage. Thomas and Ayana had settled into a rhythm of life that felt natural, comforting, and full of meaning. The bond they had formed over the previous months had grown stronger, built on trust, respect, and the quiet joy of shared work. Each morning began with the golden light of sunrise spilling across the ranch. They would rise together, feed the animals, check the fences, and make sure the water troughs were full. Despite the labor, there was a sense of fulfillment in every task, a satisfaction that came from tending to life and land with someone they cared about. Thomas noticed the ease with which Ayana moved around the ranch, her confidence growing with each passing day. She had learned to ride the horses, mend the fences, and care for the animals, but more than that, she had found a sense of purpose she had never experienced before. Yana, in turn, admired Thomas's steady strength, his knowledge of the land, and his quiet patience. He had lived through hardships, faced loneliness, and still maintained a life of honesty and hard work. His resilience inspired her, and his presence made her feel safe and valued. Their days were long, filled with chores, small conversations, and shared moments of laughter, yet each day brought them closer together, strengthening a bond that neither had expected when they first met. One morning, as they tended to the horses near the far edge of the pasture, Ayana spoke thoughtfully. "Thomas, I've been thinking, we've built something special here, haven't we?" Thomas looked at her, noticing the gentle smile on her face and the light in her eyes. "We have," he said. "It's not something that happened overnight. It took time, patience, and understanding, but we did it together." Yana nodded. "I've never felt this connected to anyone before, not like this. It's more than companionship, it feels like home." Thomas's heart warmed at her words. "Then we need to protect it," he said softly. "Life will bring challenges, but if we face them together, we can keep this bond strong." Their words reflected the reality of life on the ranch. Challenges were always present. Sometimes a fence would break, sometimes a cow would fall sick, and occasionally the weather would make their work nearly impossible. But through each obstacle, Thomas and Ayana worked side by side, trusting one another and finding strength in their shared effort. One afternoon, Ayana suggested planting a small garden near the house. She wanted to grow herbs, flowers, and native plants that reminded her of her childhood and the traditions she cherished. Thomas agreed, helping her prepare the soil and build raised beds for the plants. Together they sowed seeds, watered them carefully, and watched as tiny green shoots appeared over the next weeks. The garden became a symbol of their shared life, a living testament to patience, care, and growth. As the garden flourished, so did their relationship. Their mornings often began with laughter, tending to the plants and exchanging playful banter. Afternoons were spent on ranch work, reinforcing fences, feeding animals, and maintaining the property. Evenings were filled with quiet reflection, storytelling, and the simple pleasure of watching the desert sunset together. Each day, the connection between Thomas and Ayanna deepened, becoming a steady source of comfort and joy. Yet, life outside the ranch still posed challenges. Yana's family had gradually come to accept her choices, seeing the sincerity in Thomas's care and respect. They visited occasionally, bringing news from the reservation and sharing meals. These visits, once tense and uncertain, now became moments of warmth and understanding. Yana's family began to see the ranch not just as a remote place, but as a home where their daughter was happy, safe, and valued. The townsfolk, too, had begun to recognize the authenticity of their partnership. Gossip faded as people witnessed the dedication and mutual respect between Thomas and Ayanna. Slowly, the ranch became a place not just of labor, but of community, where neighbors could stop by, exchange greetings, and offer help without judgment or suspicion. One spring evening, as the sky turned shades of orange and pink and the air cooled, Thomas and Ayanna sat on the porch, sipping tea and watching the stars appear. The desert was quiet, except for the distant calls of birds settling in for the night. Yana turned to Thomas with a thoughtful expression. "Thomas," she said softly, "I never imagined life could feel like this, peaceful yet full, busy yet calm. I feel complete here." Thomas took her hand gently, holding it in his own. "You've brought balance to my life," he said. "I've been alone for so long, thinking I didn't need anyone. But with you, everything feels fuller, richer. You've made this ranch more than a place. It's a home now, a life I want to share." Yana smiled, a soft, contented smile that reflected the joy she felt in her heart. "And you've given me something I didn't know I needed," she said. "A place where I belong, someone I can trust, and the freedom to be myself. Thank you for letting me be part of this life." Their words marked a turning point, a quiet recognition that their partnership was no longer just about companionship. It had become a true partnership in every sense. They were planning a life together, building a home, sharing responsibilities, and supporting each other in ways that strengthened both of them. As the weeks went by, they continued to improve the ranch. Yana's garden grew lush with herbs and flowers, the fences became sturdier, and the animals thrived under their care. They made small improvements to the house, adding personal touches that reflected both their personalities. Thomas painted the porch, while Ayanna decorated it with plants and handmade decorations. Every addition, every small effort, symbolized their shared life and commitment to one another. One morning, Thomas suggested taking a break from the chores to explore the surrounding desert. They walked together along a narrow trail, observing the mesas, the cactus, and the wildlife. The air was warm, carrying the scent of blooming wildflowers and fresh earth. Yana laughed as a rabbit darted across the path, and Thomas smiled, feeling a deep sense of contentment. "I'm glad we did this," she said. "Sometimes it's easy to get caught up in work and forget to appreciate the world around us." Thomas nodded. "It's easy to forget, yes. But moments like this remind us why we do what we do. The land, the animals, the work, and the people we share it with, it all matters." Their walks became a regular part of life, a time for reflection, conversation, and quiet enjoyment. They discovered hidden springs, admired the changing colors of the desert, and watched the sun set from different vantage points. Each walk reinforced their bond, reminding them of the beauty of life when shared with someone who truly cares. Over time, their love and respect for each other became evident not only to themselves, but to everyone around them. Gianna's family expressed their pride in her independence and the life she had built with Thomas. The townspeople, once skeptical, came to see their partnership as an example of genuine connection, built on trust and honesty. One evening, as they sat together watching the stars, Ayanna spoke softly. "Thomas, do you ever think about how far we've come? From the day I first arrived here to now, it feels like we've built something extraordinary." Thomas smiled, squeezing her hand. "I think about it all the time. Life is unpredictable, but it brought us together and we made the most of it. We've created a home, a partnership, and a life we can be proud of." Jana leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the warmth and strength he offered. "I'm grateful for every moment," she whispered. Thomas wrapped his arm around her, feeling a sense of peace he had never known before. "And I'm grateful for you. You've changed my life in ways I never imagined. Together, we can face anything." The desert night stretched on, filled with the gentle sounds of nature and the quiet companionship of two people who had found their place in the world. The ranch, once a place of solitude, had become a home overflowing with life, love, and purpose. Every corner reflected their shared efforts, every animal and plant a testament to their dedication, and every sunrise and sunset a reminder of the beauty of life when shared with someone you trust. As spring turned to summer, Thomas and Ayanna continued to thrive. They worked the land, nurtured the animals, and cared for each other with unwavering dedication. Their partnership had grown into something lasting, resilient, and deeply meaningful. They had faced challenges, confronted fears, and navigated the expectations of others, emerging stronger and more united than ever. In the quiet moments, sitting on the porch or walking along the desert trails, they often reflected on their journey. They remembered the day Ayanna first arrived at the ranch, the conversations by the fire, and the moments of shared laughter and struggle. Each memory was a reminder of how far they had come, and how their bond had been strengthened by honesty, trust, and mutual respect. And as the sun set each evening over the vast Arizona plains, painting the sky with brilliant colors, Thomas and Ayanna knew that they had found something rare and precious. The loneliness that had once defined their lives was gone, replaced by a life of companionship, purpose, and love. They had built a home, nurtured a bond, and created a life that reflected their values, hopes, and dreams. Together they faced the future with confidence, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them hand in hand, side by side, and heart to heart. Their journey had begun with a single moment of courage and honesty, and it had grown into a lasting partnership filled with respect, understanding, and enduring love. And in that quiet desert landscape, under the endless sky, Thomas and Ayanna finally realized what it meant to belong, not just to a place, but to each other. Their story, once uncertain and fragile, had blossomed into a life of beauty, purpose, and shared joy, proving that even in the most unexpected places, love could take root and flourish.